human spirit, the practically tangible experience of my own perfection, realized in focalized moments, which promises the eventual actualization of my full potential through my own willingness and time. I believe in my ability to stand unwaveringly on the foundation of my faith without fear of falling. I believe that by refining my own person through time, in order to more fully represent God's perfect creation of me, that I allow my fellows the opportunity to do the same. The human spirit is eternal and invincible, and I believe that nothing outside of me can threaten the peace of my inner altar. Above all, I believe that I am a citizen of the cosmos, here to represent the Creator who sent me, and the work God gave me to do is my guarantee for everlasting peace in this world and all subsequent experiences of existence hereafter. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Existence speaks. Now has come time for me to listen. This is Existential Theism from an Experiential perspective.
Good evening and welcome to Existential Theism from an Experiential perspective. I'm Michael Wordsworth, and this evening I have the pleasure of ongoing discourse with M. Dabney regarding her book, A Declaration of Healing.
That's fine. I changed the title at, 2 years ago, was it?
And I have been following her work longer than 2 years, and I'm proud to say that this is an ongoing series where we will look in depth at the subject of existential theism and what it means to view it from an experiential perspective. We'd like to start by reading from paper 2 of her book, A Declaration of Healing. It asks the big question common to us all, the question philosophers have asked for ages: why am I here? Most obviously, I do not exist on earth by the force of my own will. Thus did I not create myself. The question of my origin incessantly nags at my mind. The family has found solution for the conundrum of our source in various creation myths and suppositions of science, evaluations of natural law. However, I still seek further evidence and truth in this matter because I find myself repeatedly unsatisfied with the partial answers I have encountered throughout my history. The question, why am I here, not only addresses my human origin, but also speaks to my understanding of the initial reason behind my existence. Moreover, what I believe to be my origin defines what purposes in life I apply myself to, and leads to how I direct the means in which I live. Therefore, after answering the question, who am I can then take the next step in understanding my true identity with the eventual goal of taking up my true self. Hence, the next question for me to answer is, why am I here? And how I choose to re-answer both of these questions hinges the next step in how I go forward in my continued existence on Earth. Since how I have chosen to answer these questions in the past has dictated the kinds of progressions I have experienced into my history up to now. Miss Dabney, would you care to elaborate?
This paper is laying out two different distinct and seemingly opposed views that the family takes, one being creationism and the other being science or evolution. and it breaks down the each of those from obviously a somewhat of a black and white perspective, in the sense that I'm addressing full creationism and I'm addressing atheism or pure materialism. And then the last part goes forward and addresses a unification of these two, science and religion. And so the question becomes one of origin. In order to understand how to be in the world, in order to understand how to function helpfully, healthfully, appropriately, and consistently, what must be understood is the origin of my existence and this existence. And so that's where this paper is starting from, in whatever way.
And we understand from science's point of view the facts of this origin being that the material plane,
Yes.
the atomic structure, the orgasmic, inorganic and organic matter, the natural evolution of a human being from, dare I say, animal origin, which is contrary to mainstream orthodox belief.
Yes, I mean the extreme backswing is, or what I mean, what we as a peoples largely believed before we got the help of science in clarifying the structures and patterns we're seeing, is that basically all of this existence came from the side rib of a god, or the spit of a god into the dirt, or a puff of air, or whatever it was. Very clay, yeah, very, very kind of pithy,
Earth.
yeah. And not really helpful or connecting us to our reality, but more of a way to explain it until we come to understand it better. But our religions have functioned where by creating a structure, they start instating very strongly a dogma in order to segregate their identity and elevate it in whatever way, supposedly. And by creating this dogma, it becomes inflexible.
Inflexible and rigid in the sense that humanity cannot progress further, adhering to these doctrines of old, a time period that we know did not contain scientific fact, and it did not have a population aware of the science of today, that most intelligent people, whether they be Christian, Muslim, Judaism, the suspicion remains: how do we reconcile the facts of science with the truth and revelation of religion? How do we break new boundaries? And certainly it starts by shifting the paradigm to at least allow the possibility that human beings have a dual origin. We're speaking from both evolution and God. We've mentioned evolution, but now let's talk about God, because the human being is a dual component in this sense.
I mean, but I think we got to stick with evolution for a minute. I mean, the reason why this split mentality has come about is because of a pattern of responsive conversation in our history. So we have our religions established before science, and they're established in whatever way, and then they're dogmatized, and then they're indoctrinated. In response, with this scientific revolution and whatever scientific revolution, theories of evolution, theories of theories that of physics, chemistry, whatnots,
Biology.
right? Biology provided answers that were more satisfactory, more grounded, more logical in whatever sense, because we are driven towards logic. We're driven towards understanding the puzzle in whatever way. And because of how our religions had acted up to point, we respond, or did respond, many with disgust and dismissal, and by that took up religion or science as if it were a replacement religion in whatever way. Extreme materialism, whatnot, and our religions get lost. Our religions get they're unable to sustain, or unable to respond relevantly to what we are experiencing and discovering and creating as a peoples.
And that change took place with the advent of scientific determinism, wherein basically soon after philosophers declared God is dead, we moved into a post-industrial era, and materialism became the new God, and science the new God, as you were explaining earlier. And now we've progressed to the point where your average intelligent person can no longer hold on to the dogmatic beliefs because there's such conflict. Our science and technology, I'm sure you would agree, has grown far surpassed our wisdom and our ability to reconcile at such a rapid pace. The future generations will have to deal with this. Lest we resort back to dogmatism, we must progress forward.
Yes, correct. And in response to and then once science, the people who backed the findings of science found some kind of revitalized salvation or identity, revitalized sense of connection with the experience and the world they're having. Now I find and I sense in my experience of people that where we have lost much or left much of the structured religion behind in large, and we have faith or we believe in the facts of science and we believe in the scientific method, that still leaves us dissatisfied. That still leaves us with
We need something to
the
unify.
existential the existential crisis.
Existential crisis.
Right, and it comes back to the idea of origin. Okay, so a person who has a set of beliefs based upon this narrative they experience, that they apply themselves to, whether these beliefs be conscious or not. And part of that narrative is where I believe I come from, where I believe I originate from, whether that be purely material, whether that be the ether, whether that be spiritual in whatever kind, whether I be sneezed out of the nose of a god. I can believe any of those. And by my belief or my faith placed in one of those structures, I act in my life. And it influences how I act and be and become and understand what I'm experiencing in my life. So that's the reason why this question of where I come from, where am I from?
It becomes the frame around the picture. It's the lens, more like a frame.
It becomes the baseline. You got to start there. I mean, we started who am I last week. Now it's why am I here? My origin. Who am I is I am. Why am I here? Because I am? I don't know. The origin, in what I'm advocating, our understanding is always either unreal, which can never be made real, or real. And if it is real, then it is only relatively true because we experience things temporally. So everything we experience is true, is reality, but it's folded out in this temporal way, so it's all relative. It's not absolute reality. It's not the full expression of the existential as such. So I can gain ever greater levels of relative truth, ever more so, by continuing to seek to orient myself towards reality as I experience it, and
what comes to mind is there's an objective and subjective.
Yes, but the subjective is back to origin, an extended aspect of the objective.
So is the existential the subjective?
It's the objective, because the existential is everything that is. I mean, okay, so last week I was talking about the difference between, I'm just going to leave the music off, please bear with us. Last week I was discussing the difference between the potential and the actual. So if nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Potential and actual are both real. In the existential, there's no distinction between the two. But in the experiential expression of God, in the Supreme Being, there is a distinction.
By definition.
By definition, because of the time-space mechanism. So the potential, just because it's not actualized, just because it's, it still is as such. And this, I mean, this, just as the actualization is a part of the origin. So by orienting myself towards my actual origin, which is revealed to me through the response of existence in my experience, then I open the ability to understand what my potential is to be taken up in each moment. So a moment happens, right? And I'm in that moment. And outside of anything I might or could do, there is a exact way that I could respond to that moment, that I can behave in that moment, that is that exactly correct.
And that response is based off of your initial judgment perception from the first place, coupled with the viewer frame of mind that you look upon this thing with.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. The belief structure.
Belief structure.
It flows forth from the belief structure. So as I was talking about last week, the distinction of free will, the only thing that we have free choice over is the decision to participate, seek to understand and embrace reality. Okay, back to the where we really were starting from with the origin. So yes, we have a biological origin per se. We have bodies that worked up through evolution to become a efficient tool to question and explore and discover and build with the other tools of this physical existence. But that
What's interesting here is that the question and perspective becomes, is God then from that viewpoint alien to this process, or is God this process as a whole? And I'll put it that way because from the human perspective of crawling up from animal origin, and then as I assume that God, a divine spiritual force, interacted on mind and body, and in this sense was the first cause of the secondary cause of human existence, the origin from animal material existence. One would assume, just because we perceive ourselves as separated identities, that God, in fact, is the alien outside of this system. But as we learn through existential theism, that in fact all is God in this process, that God is experiencing this very moment through us vicariously, and that's what makes the existential capable of the experiential.
Yes, I mean, yes, that's exactly it.
In this sense, then, what perspective does your book?
What I'm trying to get across in this paper largely is science has defined us in this way as purely animal creatures who only have, who are imperfect and susceptible to death, disease, and destruction in whatever way. The belief that I am my body and my body can be attacked by other bodies, or my body can attack other bodies, vice versa. Whereas our religions have told us that there is something about us that is given by something outside or beyond what we experience merely in the physical realm, and outside of end or a death per se, and that through a set way of being you can access this or secure some kind of salvation or reconciliation for the fact that we seem to suffer in this existence. My blending or my reconciliation of those two views, the creationism view where a god or gods created this planet in order for us to dwell on, so as we can be subservient in whatever kind, I'm not sure. And then the view that we are of purely material origin, destined to fall apart into the particles that we were formed together in. The reconciliation of that, I say, is that back to what you were saying, because God, as existential, as the existential, is whole, complete, and perfect. Everything that could be, is, will be, whatever can be expressed, is a part of God. The only way that that can be perfectly explored or unfolded is through this experience. And so this experience becomes every combination, every interaction, every relationship between every aspect in every different manner possible throughout the unfolding of time and space. So the mortal creature, being at the precipice of biological creature creation on our planet, is here for the sense. It's an efficient yet necessarily so fully covering expression where biology, this kind of imperfect substance, no, this very changing substance, this very transitioning, ever overfolding on itself, works its way up to a creature that can seek to know and be like God. And so each biological planet works its way up to make a seat for a consciousness that can start at the lowest rung of unknowing and strive up through the eternal journey to the fullest knowing of God in time.
In the fullness of time.
In the fullness of time. And that process, whereas we can procrastinate it in whatever way, it's in fact perfect. I was reviewing what I was saying last week, and I think one of the best ways that best, most crystallized thing I said was the metaphor with so God wrote this video game and is playing this video game and has all the cheat codes but doesn't use them. And so the way God is able to play this video game, because God's personality is so diverse, so manifold in whatever way, God expressed God's self in every handicap possible, if that's possible, if that makes sense. Is that clear? So God, okay, so I'm in this body, I got this bum knee, I'm only so high, I have all these handicaps and advantages in whatever way. And through that, I can still manifest the fullness, a full, perfect experience. And by having those handicaps, I manifest a full, perfect experience in a unique and efficient manner, considering the massiveness of this existence, of this person I like to call God, so.
And speaking of God, perhaps we could continue with the part B of paper
Yes.
2, God, that we discussed. I mean, if I don't want to, was there more that you wanted to add in about evolution?
No, please continue.
Well, indeed, because I don't want to leave the conversation lopsided. It is indeed revolutionary at this point to accept, even entertain the idea that the facts of science and the truths of religion must be reconciled in our era, lest we not go forward at all, that we have to then discuss, well, what is the component that God contributes? And I think you were actually already touching on that by saying that God is in everything already, that in a sense this is God looking at God in a mirror and nothing else. And then perhaps it raises to my mind the question of who's experiencing what. Is the human experiencing or sharing vicariously with God, who is actually experiencing, or is God sharing with the human as the human experiences this?
Well, it's all. It's back to that.
Both?
Definitely both. Much of our misunderstanding, much of our struggle with understanding our experience, is that we believe a dichotomy or a disunity or disjunction or an either or exists, as if does it have to be God or science? Does it have to be whatever it is? And this disjunction or this division it has nothing to do with reality. In reality, there only is what is. Nothing stands opposed to it. Nothing threatens it. Nothing is opposite to it. There are no opposites
And
in reality.
that we would call the reality of God, as to distinguish it from any common perception of reality.
Yes, but the reality of God is happening. The reality of God is happening as we are speaking now. And that happening can be perceived by the mind of the mortal creature, if the mortal creature so chooses. Albeit that choice must be made in every moment. And once it's consistently made, then it no longer, I mean, it's like every other choice, every other habit of thought we've applied ourselves to and made every time in that moment. It's choosing something different, choosing to orient towards reality, towards, actual happening, what is, outside of any projection, and saying yes each time, in faith, absolutely in faith.
Well, could we look at how we've come to this point in our religion as we define God and his role in bringing us to earth? Going back to Sumerian text, Babylonian text, keep in mind that the Jewish belief system, the scrolls that were eventually written down in Moses' day, did not contain, if I'm not mistaken, the creation myth that this was later achieved 500 years after Moses' time, when the Jews again went into captivity, this time not in Egypt but in Babylon. And there, during their stay in Babylon, they suffered a severe blow to their national identity. And it was there at this time as well that they derived their creation myth from Sumerian texts that recorded a very similar story. Man being derived from clay, from the earth, even in one reference from a rib. And we know that in Abraham's day, they did not have this origin. And so today, Christian, Judeo, Muslim ideology contains in it the same root from that initial journey of the Jews' captivity in Babylon and how they pulled out this creation myth. And it's, to say the least, an incomplete story. It doesn't provide, at least for an intelligent person, many answers. The story begins and ends and starts again. And it's rather quaint in its simplicity, its folkloreness.
Yes, but I mean, just like with children, it's necessary to have somewhere to start. If we're not willing to refine our knowledge or update our knowledge, that's a whole different thing. But I mean,
have we grown to the point now where we can, beyond our initial child, are we ready as a society to accept this?
Absolutely.
To even dare question this?
Absolutely. We have willingly, and as the younger generations come forward and start picking up their own personalities and the responsibility thereof, we have largely chosen to walk away from our religious structures. Not all of us, but many of us. And even if not in full, many of us walk away from the most extreme versions of our religious structures, and that's because there's so little, or there is no real living, fulfilling application of these structures. They are outdated, they are irrelevant, they are
segregated,
incredibly isolated.
The Christian faith, the very teachings that were meant to unite humanity under the thought that we share a common spiritual father, despite our differences, our understanding of each other can be transcended by a belief in a common origin in God, and that would unite us.
Yeah.
But we've, as a Christian community, there's more segregation, more isolation than perhaps any religion I know, actually, when I think about it. There's like over 1,400 different Christian factions.
Yes, but I mean, that's found in almost all of our religions, our leading religions, all these factions, all these minor, just...
If a religion doesn't progress,
right. Well, I mean... Organized religion can it takes an open idea, a revolutionary idea that is a necessary part of our spiritual understanding, and that will necessarily survive and should evolve, but doesn't always. It takes one of these expressions, and it puts it into a closed structure, and then it declares it as truth forever. But because we're only capable of relative truth at this point, because we're not capable of absolute truth, by doing so, it's suffocating itself. And albeit it's a glacial process in whatever way, but it becomes dogmatic. It becomes empty. It becomes a shell of itself. It's eaten itself from the way out. And our structured religions were once necessary because of our level of understanding, and the fact that they allowed for some kind of platform for us to start building a knowledge base off of. But we've gotten to a point as a peoples, especially with the boom of information and the connection we can now have with all of our brethren throughout this globe, through the internet. We've come to a point where we no longer need this closed structure that we must segregate ourselves into in order to find spiritual connection. And so then you get responses like New Age responses of Gnosticism, responses of Buddhism, which many people misunderstand Buddhism, thinking Buddhism is a religion when in fact Buddhism is a philosophy.
Well, when you're speaking of the evolutionary nature of religion, oddly enough, that religion, if anything else, has evolved.
Yes, and now we're at the point in that evolution where we must take the next step forward as a people in discussing our spirituality. And so my advocation is this concept of living religion, the personal experience of the very real spiritual happening that we are living through, living in, and living with, and then the sharing of it through open dialogue and conversation and communication. It's my firm belief that there can be no universal theology, mainly for the fact that I believe God is a person. If God is a person, God is the utmost unique, being the ultimately unified, ultimately diverse personality, and each individual themselves being unique, thus relates to God uniquely. Just like how I relate to you is vastly different from how your mother relates to you or how I relate to your mother. It's the same thing with this experience that each of us is having with God, this living conversation in whatever sense. But there can be a universal experience. If our experience of living religion, if our orientation towards spirit is aligned with reality, with truth, then it will be reflected in how we build and how we co-create and how we coordinate and how we experience and respond to each other. And so there can be a universal experience that can be formed. And now, in order to do that, we must take the next step in our maturation and pick up a more serious form of spirit outside of the almost I don't know, babysitting form that was structured religion.
Well, let's look at that structure historically. We start first with the religion can and exist at any three levels at any given point, starting with the religion of the body, progressing into the religion of the mind, and now what you're talking about, the new frontier, the precipice that we're at, the religion of the spirit. Whereas the religion of the body, initially primitive man worshipped that which they did not understand and feared. And the basic tenet was to appease an angry, wrathful God by some means, either through sacrifice, bloodshed, giving up or destroying crops, but always there was a penalty and a sacrifice. And then we better understand by the time that the Semitic tribes adopted beliefs, they did have monotheism. thus making themselves most aligned with the concept of God as we could understand it during that day. But they progressed into a religion of a mind. And what the religion of the mind basically only asks is adherence to doctrine. One need not question the doctrine. And if one does, it's on a surface level. It's not a concern because at the core of it, it's to isolate, then develop a creed, a doctrine, crystallize it, and leave it alone. And then one can become a blasphemer if they break away from that. But now we've lost, the church has lost that tyrannical grip that doesn't allow for any progression. People used to be burned alive
Yeah,
if you
well,
thought apart from the church.
Yeah, but the church, I mean, the church, we can, harp on the church. We can, shake our stick at it. But all our structures work in the same kind of halting evolutionary way. And until we start actually picking up our responsibility in each idea set, I mean, sciences, religions, politics, how we relate socially, how we relate romantically, whatever it is, these things have been habituated in a way, and they must mature, and they do. So each are at their own pace. Right now, I mean, whereas religion used to be science, or religion used to be a king of ideas in whatever way, and there was much work and good work going on. That transitioned when it lost that leading role with science, and then science has now been puffed up to this point. But in reality, there must be found a balance in all of these explorations, and it's back to the idea of no opposites, or it's also back to the idea of like, equal but different. I don't know. That's a difficult one to get around, but
Well, how about infinitely diverse yet infinitely unified at the same
yes,
time?
absolutely. Yes, that's God's personality being infinitely unified, infinitely diverse. And later in my work in my book, I actually break down the what I claim to be the 5 different ways in which we approach religion at this point. First one being structured religion, where you blindly adhere to a dogmatic structure without any room for changing your mind. Second one being unstructured religion, where you are still participating in a structure, but you know that it is embedded in its history, and you're seeking to revitalize it. You're seeking to breathe new air into it, bring it up to the times, or you're seeking to influence it in whatever way, or at least get something out of a group spiritual experience in whatever way. Then there is weak agnosticism, which is where many form small cults, sects, various nods towards mysticism, and various nods towards philosophical theisms of whatever kind, but nothing that can be consistently taken up in life, and create a consistent experience, an experience that can be shared in whatever way. And then there's strong agnosticism, which is, okay, I'm not sure whether or not there is something, but it doesn't apply to me anyway, and I'm just going to live out life, whatever. And then there's atheism, the belief that in only the material realm. And my alternative to these, my response to these is that they leave the employer, the person employing one of these positions, disjointed, and still believing themselves imperfect, still unconnected with this experience they're having, unsatisfied with any spiritual pursuit, if any, and we're at a point now as a peoples where we don't know where next to turn. We don't know how to address that problem that existential crisis, basically. And so back to my solution, which would be living religion, which would be the taking up of this concept of living religion, where we recognize the fact that we are each having a unique spiritual experience, and we start talking about it. And we start talking about it openly and honestly and faithfully, lovingly. And so much of this book that I'm writing, much of this work is trying to construct a basic language to start talking about this kind of experience, this very every moment happening.
Can I read another paragraph from your book?
Yes, please.
Because it's pertaining to what you're saying. This is paragraph 2 of paper 2 of A Declaration of Healing by M. Dabney. Religion to date has provided me with the perspective of a higher being or beings, gods that created me to dwell in and on their God-made realities, and God is spelt in this sense with a little g, for those of you listening out there in the audience, that created me to dwell in and on their God-made realities. These gods, little g, theoretically reside over humankind as fatherly or motherly dictators. They watch over me when I stay faithful and act in accordance with deity mandate, and allegedly reap punishment on me when I act wicked because I work outside the deity rules of conduct. In effect, religion to date has provided me with a rich and diverse orchard of spiritual understanding. Unfortunately, however, due to self-blindness, I have failed to remove the sick trees from the land, or thought to take the spoiled fruit from the bushel. In counter and response to religious failure, I have often employed modern realizations and revolutions in science to depose the all-purpose answer of a God's doing in question of happening. I thus find myself giving up God due to organized religion's failure in exchange for discovered facts and theories based on test, trial, and reason. I could read on actually, but from the recognition that I live on a round ball spinning in rotation around a flaming gaseous star, to theories regarding gravity, motion, and matter, I daily discover new fronts in scientific understanding. I then work to find how best to implement these insights upon realizing the various utilizations of natural law. Today, the Big Bang Theory and the theory of evolution shape my understanding of the world I live in and how it and I originally came to be. The tragedy remains, however, that whilst scientific understanding necessarily benefits me and works as a real part of my innate purpose, when exchanging God for science, I reduce myself to the animal level. Thus, I deny myself access to my full potential and, in effect, exchange my potentially powerful life for a sub-existence. Now, those are indeed, again, to focus on today's show, we're talking about why am I here from the perspective of evolution, God, and both. That our true purpose lies not in our destiny as much as in our origin, and so we must seek to clarify and understand that which is yet to be reconciled in modern religion today. The church of old.
Our destiny is found in the understanding and the ever increasing understanding of our origin. So it must be our origin that is primary in our focus of how we experience this. So I think I'm going to wrap this up for right now. If any of you out there are wanting to receive a copy of the text thus far, a PDF copy for free, you can email me at world, WORLD, was, at gmail.com. Please include your name, your age, and your favorite book, and I will respond personally. And then also please take into consideration that this work is in progress, so there are some minor editing errors, I am sure, and sentences dropping off right at the very end of the text. It stands at about 115 pages at present, and I'm a little bit into the 4th chapter. So My new show time will be every Sunday at 7. So it will be weekly instead of bi-monthly. It'll be at 7 instead of 8. And I guess that'll be it for the day.
Thank you, Ms. Dabney. This has been Existential Theism from an Experiential perspective. We'll return next week, Sunday at 7 p.m. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.